Hello again. So today I've decided to finally get started on coating some of my glass jars in acrylic paint. I've seen several videos to do it on YouTube, but because I just want to give this a try for now, I'm not going to be too fussy about it. I haven't prepped the jar in any way except to wipe it down thoroughly with isopropyl alcohol. So I've got the jar here on my my handy towel stand, because I wanted something that didn't have too much base on it so the drippings could be used for other things. But I also wanted something that I could keep the jar firmly in place, so I stuffed it with bubble wrap, which I'll just push back up harder into there. And the jar is just held in place with the bubble wrap so it won't move around. And the lid, I've just got a little plastic pot cup thing wedged into it to hold the lid in place so that I can coat the lid as well. This is what the jars look like. They're Moccona coffee jars. This one I've just finished, so I'm going to be washing it, removing all the labels, and I use baby oil to get the stickiness. There's little sticky patches of dried glue on there, and I find it removes that plus the glue from these really well. So I've got some leftover paint from my paint pour yesterday, which had silver and other blues in it, and I just scooped it off from my silicone mats and put it straight into a container, and I'm just going to tip it down over the jar and the lid, and then I'm going to leave that for a while until it's partially dry, and then I'm going to see what other colours I might like to pour over the top of that, so it's kind of like a layered effect. There are two things I really want to find out when I'm doing this. It's how the colour actually pours onto this jar, particularly with a sort of a dip in the surface at the bottom, and how well it sticks to the glass. Okay, so I will now just tip this down over the jar. And the lid. Sorry if I'm in the way of the camera here. Right, I'll use my little spatula just to spread the paint over the rest of the glass that it's missed. Okay, I think that is all of it. Looking very good. Except I'm going to have to take the paint off around the underside of the glass lid, as I really don't need the paint on there. But what I'm going to do now is torch the jar to get rid of the little air bubbles. There's a few that I can see on there. So here's what it looks like. I've just brought the camera down to show you up close, and of course the lid. Okay, so the jar that I painted is now completely dry. It's been almost a week because there was a lot of paint on the top in the main piece there, and on the bottom, I don't know if you can see it there, but I actually touched it thinking it was dry and found that I came away with a wet finger, something that I've done more than once, but because it's on the bottom, I'm not worried about it. The colours have come out beautifully, very subtle bluey greens in there, which is what I wanted. And of course the inside, I don't know if you can see that very well, but the inside has also come out quite nicely, although that's not a priority for me, as it is going to be a jar that has things in it. And of course the lid sits on there beautifully, which means that you can't actually see where the paint is a bit thinner around here, but I may go over that. I've still got some of the paint left, so I may just dot that over with a paintbrush and let that dry so that it's all uniform. And there's a wee dot there as well. So I'm now going to put some transfers on the jar. I've decided to do that. I want to put the transfers on the jar and then paint it. So I'll get my transfer stuff together and show you what I'm doing. So I've got my saucer of water here, and I have got some transfers already cut up. In this case I am doing fish. The sheet of transfers looks like that, and the transfers are actually watercolour, which means they're slightly transparent, or quite a bit transparent. So I'm going to have to see how they actually go on the jar, but my plan is to completely cover the jar with them before I recoat more paint on there. So I will get my piece that I already have cut them out from. As you can see, there is a covering over them, and I just get my little scissors and I cut around the fish as carefully as I can. These ones are quite challenging because there are a lot of fish on the sheet, but they are jammed up together. I'm not too worried if I cut the tail end of one fish off, because they are going to be positioned all over the jar, so you just won't notice. So I've cut one out. I've got several already cut up here, ready to go, but I'm going to be putting on twice that many, possibly even more. So now I pop them into the water, leave them for a little while, and then pull them out to the edge. There's a larger one with several fish on it, and pull it up. There's an air bubble there. Pull that one up and just leave them sitting on the edge. They're nice and wet, and I will try one now and see if it's ready to put on the jar. I have the jar here, and I'll just move the saucer along there slightly, and I'm going to get the transfer with my tweezers. I think you can just see that in the bottom of the camera, and I'm going to pop it onto the jar like so. Press it down and hope that when I move the paper away, the transfer will be left behind, and that is exactly what has happened. And then I just get my trusty little sponge and give it a quick dab down to make sure that it's well stuck onto the side of the jar, like so. And there is one of the fish already on there, and then I've got the next group of fish here, which is rather a long one, so I'll use my fingers rather than the tweezers, and I will go down run those down the side like so. Make sure they're well pushed on and slide the paper off, leaving the transfers behind. Get the sponge, dab carefully. That one there I might need to ease out with my finger, but it's all right. And just dab it. You don't have to dab it till it's dry, just to make sure that there's no air bubbles behind the transfer. Make sure it's nice and flat to the container or object that you are sticking it down to. Okay, so there's 2 lots of fish on there already. As you can see, they are quite transparent, but still visible on the jar. And I think when I can get the jar completely covered, including the lid, you will see a lot of little fish swimming on there. But of course, again, you have to understand that they are fish, and some people could look at these and just think they're blobs of colour. So I'm going to do the rest of the jar now off camera, and then come back and show you the jar completely covered in the transfers. There is the jar completed. I have got fish on the lid. You can see there, or what are supposed to be fish, and right around the jar. I've got them just dotted all over it. Now I have to make clear that the transfers that I have used on this are the temporary tattoo ones, the same type as on a previous video called Spider Wars, where I transferred spiders onto a canvas. The difference is that when I am transferring temporary tattoos, they are supposed to be cut out, placed in the position they're going to stay in, and then wet. You push a wet sponge or a damp cloth or something against them to dampen the paper. The reason why I dipped these ones was because the tattoos needed to be wet very quickly before they were stuck to the jar. I found because of the curvature of the jar, if I tried to put the tattoo on dry and hold it down and wet the back of the paper, it wasn't really working for me. So a quick dip of the tattoo and then onto the jar. Now I did have a few issues with that, of course, because the tattoo had to be placed very quickly. You may or may not be able to see there. That particular one squidgied up a bit and didn't come out as flat as what it should have, but not a problem. This is all experimental for me. So my next step is going to be to mix up some C-type colours of paint with Floetrol, but I'm going to do it in the way that Mixed Media Art has shown us how to do. Marcy, her name is, and she has a very good channel. And I'm not going to mix the paints in properly, so that when the Floetrol dries, there should be bare patches, hopefully, where some of the fish will show through. So I'm just having fun doing this. Right, so I've managed to set everything up here. A bit worried about my camera because it's on a little tripod and it's leaning over so far I think the whole thing will fall over. But anyway, I've put my jar onto an upside down cup, which wants to stick to the bottom of it, so that the paint will just dribble off. There might not be terribly much to dribble off, but I'm also just running the paint down from the top. So I have got around 30 grams of Floetrol in this cup, and to that I am going to add some Montmartre Premix Turquoise, my own mix of Cerulean Blue, and South Ocean Blue, which is, again, it's my own mix of what, as close to I could get of the Franchville South Ocean Blue. So I'm going to add each one of these paints to the Floetrol, but I'm just going to add it in sort of spots. There I have the 3 paints all mixed in there. Well, not mixed in, but dropped in. And now I'm going to get my chopstick to just give them a bit of a stir in, like so. Try and merge them in a bit together, not too much because I don't want them all too mixed in. That will do. That is plenty. Okay, so now I am going to pour this onto the top of the jar and just let it run down. Okay, so I am now going to use a little Floetrol again over the top of that. Before I do, I'm just going to get my little spatula, and dribble some of those colours back up over the jar. Right, as I said at the start, this is just an experiment, so now I'm going to put a little more Floetrol over the jar so that some of the fish will actually show through. I don't know if it will. It could very well end up just sliding down the sides and top and not actually creating anything in the way of showing the fish. So I have now done what I can with the jar for my little experimentation. Either way, I think the colours are just gorgeous. I think I might have a little bit much Floetrol on the top, so again I'm going to get the last bits out of my cup. I'll get a stir stick to take them out, and I will just dribble that down onto the top to help it to break up that Floetrol. And possibly pick up a tiny bit with my spatula of the other colours that are in it to break up that turquoise. Gosh, this is all experimentation for me. I never have been that much artistically inclined, but I'm finding paint pouring is so therapeutic for me. I really do enjoy doing it and taking pleasure from the final creations. Just pop a drop of sea green on the top. South Ocean Blue. Just a pinprick of colour in there too. break that up. Looks good. Now all I can do is let gravity do its work, and I will come back later sometime, possibly even tomorrow, to show you the jar as it's drying. It might even be in several days' time. It just depends on how long this takes to dry. Well, it's been a week since I painted this pot. It took a long time to dry, and I even managed to put a very small fingerprint mark right there. It's slightly rough, I don't know if you can see it, on the lid. Just because I touched it thinking it was completely dry, and it wasn't. I've done that a few times. I should have learned my lesson by now. But I'm very, very happy with the colours and the look of the jar. I did manage to get some of the fish showing through that I had on there. You can barely see, you may there be able to see some as well. There's a little one there, and of course there's the ones down there as well. But overall I think the jar is just beautiful, and it's going to be a birthday gift to someone very, very close to me. I did find that I could actually match the paint up. When I looked at it, it worked quite well. It's just a case of finding there it is. The blue line there was the one that I used for match up. And that was it. There we are. But the fish, I managed to get a few, so I think what I'm going to have to do in future is thin the paint down that I use if I'm going to add it with the Floetrol, but I certainly will be trying that experiment again at some stage. So thank you very much again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.